Welcome.
Witamy.
Witajcie.
Добро пожаловать.
Welcome. Sveiki atvykę.
欢迎
Tere tulemast.
Deutschland und andere Länder mit Anna Lasonczek. Der erste und einzige Podcast in Deutschland, Österreich und der Schweiz, der sich mit interkultureller Kommunikation beschäftigt, spannende Impulse über fremde Länder liefert, entfernte Kulturen näher bringt und erfolgreiche Menschen mit internationaler Erfahrung interviewt. Heute im Gespräch mit Anna Lasonczek, Linda Boakye.
Okay, then you were back and then you did another experience in France.
En France? Oui, oui.
How was that? Your first day in France. What was the biggest surprise for you?
Do you know, and I'm going to share this with you, this is quite hilarious. I studied French and I went to France and Paris in particular because ever since I was a child I had this Paris dream. I'm gonna, ooh la la, have a French guy and live the high life in France and in Paris and be bilingual. And eventually I ended up being bilingual, but it was a surprise.
It was a surprise.
I mean, when you go there as a not as an established, let's say, business professional, but as someone starting out, entry-level working environment in the banks, you're not living in the second, or you're not living in those high apartments looking over Monceau Park or on the Champs-Élysées, for example. You could afford to live in the suburbs, and that wasn't as pretty as it's in the films.
Yeah, that was the reality, not the movie.
Exactly. And also when they say, oui madame, or, you know, when you think, oh, they're so polite, or wow, they say please and everything, there's a lot of it that's quite patronizing. Do you know what I mean? So just understanding that subtleties and realizing it wasn't all that it's cracked up to be in my head, that was a shock. But again, as I lived there more and got to know the people, and again, getting into that circle of groups, because remember, people form their friendship groups quite early on. So when you're a new person and you're trying to infiltrate the group, it takes getting out of your comfort zone to do that. And I think that's what most expats don't do. So my English friends would normally hang out as the English lot and go out, but you can't truly integrate and be part of a culture if you hang out with other foreign students or other foreign people. You've got to put yourself constantly out of your comfort zone. So hang out with French people and they'd be speaking fast and you wouldn't understand it, but it does get better and you integrate a lot better when you choose to hang out with natives. Yeah.
Okay, so what did you appreciate about French the most? So what did you learn there?
What did I learn? A lot of things. I really appreciate the French culture. I appreciate the love for arts as well. So I used to go to the ballet and the opera quite a bit, which was beautiful. You know, I love the expressive. I love that young people, like rather than going out clubbing, which is the English young culture, which I was used to, would have a bottle of red wine, you know, and you go for a meal, like and a cooked meal at home in someone's house, and you get invited to that, and you all cook together or have like aperitif, like just finger foods, and hang out at home rather than spending all that money going out. I liked that familial. I mean, I remember once
being in a group again, the same as you knew from Ghana and China.
In China, yeah. Okay. I remember once meeting a girl, and she's still now one of my best friends. But again, taking risks when you're abroad. I met her at a party, which I was invited to by some distant friend. And I was saying, oh, do you know what? I've never left Paris to go to the suburbs. And she said, well, my grandparents live in Sens, which is outside Paris, about 3 hours outside Paris. I'm going to visit them. Do you want to come? Next weekend? Sure. And
it's something that would have happened to you probably in England. It was something surprising.
Yeah. So someone randomly asking you to come see them with their grandparents, and all I knew about this girl was her name was Aurore, and she spoke English. And that was it. And I'd agreed to go and spend a weekend with her and her grandparents. And we became best friends, and we've been friends since, and I still go back to Paris to go visit her. But taking that chance, you know, and just thinking, believing in humanity of people, and like even though we're culturally different, we've got that humanity.
Yeah.
And her grandparents were lovely, and I adopted them as my grandparents, and they were so lovely, and it was so nice again to be invited into a home environment and being treated like that. That was great.
So probably because you didn't give up at the beginning, your dream or your picture of of friends didn't come true, and then you still just stick to it, and still, as far as I know, you were very, very open and kind, and how you treat people would treat you. But it's really, really something very amazing and surprising that somebody you hardly know, then you get to know her grandmother.
Yeah, it's just being open, and I mean the dream is still there. I will move back to Paris, maybe for a short time, to live that luxury life of croissant and my coffee and my heels, walking the Champs-Elysees, looking out of my apartment to that amazing Eiffel Tower. Keep the dream alive.
That's true. That's true. It's just the reward for being patient, and those who just go for it and stick to the dreams and then do something for it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you do a lot. But before we start talking about the differences in, for example, applying for jobs in the international area, what you do and what you help people every day, I just wanted to very, very shortly talk about your another experiences in Mexico, and then actually that's it, in Germany. So what was, generally speaking, something you think that people who travel all over the world could learn? Because I think many of them, they dream to live one day maybe in Latin America, enjoy the sun, or just go to another place, and they just don't have the courage to do it.
Yeah.
And
I think
you've lived in so many continents. So how can you, what can you give them on the way so that they
I'd say, I think one principle I live by is everything's a choice and everything's reversible, but do it. You know, take the plunge, do it. Believe in humanity, you know, and believe that your personality will translate. Like, regardless of language barriers and cultural barriers, if you're genuine, authentically yourself, that will come across. You know, that's one of those things that you can't hide from people. You know, you're a good person. People want to be good to you. So I've met foreign students or foreign people in the UK that I lost, that I've picked up on the street and driven them around to find their place. And people return that favor to you. In China, people did that for me countless times. Or I remember getting lost in Macau, and people borrow me the mobile phone so I can find this hotel. I was lost for almost an entire day. But believe in humanity, and people will do that for you. And take that risk. You'll never know. And if you don't like it, you can always come back. Yeah. You know, but you've got to have that experience and go for the experience. Okay, whether it's a good one or a bad one, go for that experience. You'll always have it come back to you, and you'll always be fine. You know, it's the world, it's people. We have the same intrinsic values. Go and do it.
Fantastic.
Live a little.
Okay, so let's talk, for example, when somebody wants to apply for a job in a different country. Let's talk about the differences first between the France and the UK.
Okay.
What could you recommend? Let's talk about the basics, like CV, how it looks like, and just compare what should you do to apply for UK and for French.
That's how my business started, helping people when I lived in France, helping people in France find English-speaking jobs. And working in HR, that was my expertise. And I think before you even apply to a job in a different country, it's important to find out what the differences are, what's culturally acceptable. So for example, in France, your CV is usually one page No waffling and embellishing your achievements. It's a fact statement. It's one page. Nobody wants to read more than one page. It's I've studied here, I've worked here, I've done this, full stop. So it's one-page document, a French CV. You have to have your picture on it. That's what's culturally acceptable. Sometimes you put your marital status, whether you're single or married. Sometimes you put your age on there. What else? Your picture on there, your age, your marital status.
So that's very different
that's a French
from what
CV.
you do in UK, yeah.
In the UK, it's completely different. A UK recruiter wants to understand not just what your job title was, but the value you added to the company, or the range of experiences that you had in that employment. So if you're a project manager, what was your largest project? What was your value added to the company? So you would write not only the experience, but you'd embellish on it.
You are allowed to use such words like the largest, the biggest, which you wouldn't do in a French CV.
Exactly. So you wouldn't even embellish at all on a French CV. In the UK, on a UK CV, you don't put your picture on there, your marital status, your date of birth, because we believe in non-discrimination. Not that the French don't. It's just different. Not bad or worse, but just different. So you wouldn't put anything that would make a recruiter likely to discriminate against you. I mean, if you had a Polish surname like yours or an African surname like mine, you couldn't do much about that. But anything else that would discriminate you, you don't put on there. And I've known people to take it to the extremes where they wouldn't even put their addresses because people believe that they'll be discriminated against because of the area they live in or where they come from. So that's quite interesting. A UK CV is 2 pages, a French CV is 1 page. Or 2 to 3 pages, depending on your experience and the quality of the CV, rather than just waffling on, just going home for 3 pages.
So a lot of business information, and you can say the best words you can even imagine about you, but no personal details, it's not required.
Exactly. I mean, comparing that to the Ghanaian culture, a Ghanaian CV would be, I think we've adopted more of the British standard, so it could be 2 pages, but you would use a lot of, and actually I found this working with a lot of Indian students as well, because they have that same cultural mindset. There's a lot of big words, and they want to put everything that they've done on there, so awards they've had when they were 8 years old in ballet school or something like that. But it's an award and it needs to be on there. You know, they'd use big words, and when I say big words, normally on a UK CV you'd go for understanding rather than a show off of the range of your vocabulary. Whereas in a Ghanaian CV or an Indian one, you would go for using impressive words just to show how educated you are, or the level of achievements that you've got. So culturally, you've got to know about these things before you apply. And I think that's what I find fascinating about my career and helping people to do those differences.
Okay, that's great. Any other CV you want to compare, or just something, maybe a story for when you are invited to the interview? Yes.
What I've noticed is, depending on which culture, a lot of emphasis is placed on looking smart. And invariably you would do in most business scenarios or most professional scenarios. It doesn't have to be business. So sometimes in different cultures, an artist might go in a suit, like with no sort of creative outlet physically, because they want to be taken as a professional. Depending again on the organizational culture, you might be expected to go in just normal clothes, and if you went in a suit, you'd be perceived as being a bit too pompous and thinking you're better than everyone else. So it's important to understand not only the country culture, but the organizational culture of wherever you apply to. So I was in Seattle, where Microsoft have their headquarters, a few months ago, and I was working with this top consultant who works for PwC. And you should see him go to work. I mean, this guy gets paid over $250 per project. So top level consultant, and he goes to work in trainers and a t-shirt, like Mark Zuckerberg, for example, and Steve Jobs, what they look like. And in the American culture, it's more about your intelligence rather than how you look. Whereas in many other places, you will be judged on how you look.
In France.
Do you know what I mean? You've got to keep up the appearance and look the part. So it's very important, depending on what country you go to, in the work context, to adopt that culture.
You will not get the second chance
to make a first impression. Absolutely.
So okay, that's great. And come back after 7 experience. Now you are since a couple of months you've been to Germany. So
yes.
How would you compare Germany to your international experience? So in which ways there is something different that you are able to experience before?
I've fallen in love with Germany, actually. That seems paradoxical, seeing as my fiancé is German. But I think perception-wise has been different. So you've got your typical stereotypes where Germans are punctual, Germans structured, strict, rigid. But again, I've met Germans that are not. I'm not saying stereotypes don't have a reason. There's a reason we have stereotypes, and it's important. But I've found that most of the Germans I've met are quite open. I've been invited to people's houses just like I would in those Latin cultures. I've made really good friends, and actually this is a double-edged sword. I assumed that I don't speak German myself, but I assumed everyone spoke English. Sometimes I found that to be true when I've been in the big cities. But when I've been in smaller cities, I'm like, what, you don't speak English? What do you mean you don't speak English? And I've been quite frustrated because I expect them to speak English. And again, that's that's on you, that's not on them. You're in their country.
You realized you corrected your picture because it was in your head.
Exactly, and they'd rather speak their own language, and you've got to adapt to that. So sometimes I've been in a restaurant. We went to a Chinese restaurant, for example, and it was easier for me to communicate with them in German because she didn't speak English. In Chinese because she didn't speak English, I didn't speak German. So I was like, okay, Chinese or French or Spanish, anything else.
A woman from Ghana living in UK comes to visit her German fiancé, goes to Chinese restaurant speaking Chinese. Exactly.
And when I was in Hong Kong, I met quite a few Ghanaians. So we spoke Ghanaian Chui, which is my Ghanaian language. Okay. And who would have thought that I'd go halfway across the world to speak my native language? It's the world we live in, and it's fascinating and fabulous.
So what else about the Germans? In which way have they surprised you, if they surprised you?
The openness to trying different things. So I was invited to Toastmasters, and people have been very welcoming. So I've been offered lifts from strangers. People come and speak to you. I had coffee in a hotel yesterday, and just there was a group of people that were just sitting on the sofas next to us, and they had us speak in English, and they chipped in, spoke English. When I went to dinner, the whole table we were on, although they were all German, spoke English for my benefit, so I wouldn't feel left out. So we're very accommodating.
Yeah, so it was easier to get in touch than in China. It doesn't take so much time.
Yes, and I think the warmth of the people, you don't necessarily, well, I don't, or my stereotypes don't associate Germans with being very warm people and very friendly. So if you went to Ghana, for example, you say, oh, they're very friendly people, or more of the Latin cultures you think are very friendly people, but the warmth and the friendliness and the humanity that I've experienced in Germany has been second to none. And I know people say Cologne isn't reflective of Germany,
exactly.
But I have so many German friends, so I think I can say for most of Germany,
Okay. So it was something what surprised you. What do you think could the Germans be grateful for? Or maybe something they are not aware if somebody who hasn't traveled as much as you, after all things you've seen in so many continents, living there, what do you think could the Germans appreciate more or be grateful for?
You know, this is quite funny because this morning on Facebook, one of my German friends was talking about Deutsche Bahn, and there was a storm yesterday, so I think most of the train routes are not working. And she'd written something about Deutsche Bahn doesn't work and the transport system. And I was thinking, we really model the German transport system, because to us, especially in England and Southern Rail, if you know anything about that from where I come from.
I used to live in Cambridge, yeah.
Oh, do you know what I mean? They've got this reputation of not being reliable or just never working, and there's got to be a leaf on the rail or just a snowflake and everything comes to a standstill. And we have this perception that German transport system is the best. So I think they could appreciate that it works a lot better than some of the other ones.
I could say for a comedian who just make joke from the stage about Deutsche Bahn, I say, okay, probably they've never been traveling by train abroad, maybe with exception of Japan and Switzerland, because there are two countries where the trains are even more on time. But
so we could be grateful for the things that do work. But transport system, I think, is an easy thing to complain about, and we don't realize how lucky we are to be able to get by, to be able to get by as well without speaking the language. That's really good. You know, that you can ask, and 1 in 2 people would speak English or be able to help you on your way. I say this place is cleaner than some places, and most people disagree. I think you disagree, but again, the level of sanitation is far more superior to some other countries. So again, that's another thing that Germans can be grateful for, and also the diversity that we enjoy in Germany. So you can get, I think we had an Indonesian food yesterday, which in some places will be very rare. I mean, you just have to hop and skip around, and you can pick your world cuisine within a distance. Yes, you can do that in the UK and some other places, but again, some other places you'll struggle to find anything other than the local food, as I found when I lived in mainland China, for example. Some places, so there's some places where we'd go and have pizza, and that was a treat. Whereas in the UK, I could just order Domino's, for example, and it would be on my doorstep at the click of a button. So mundane things that we perceive as mundane are not so mundane. And you will miss that. I remember being in France and really missing bacon from, and a good English breakfast, which the French think are really disgusting, because it's like, why would you have sausage and bacon and beans first thing in the morning? And I'm just like, I didn't even have it that much in England, but because I can't get it, get it as much, I really miss that.
Okay, so you miss some kind of English food. That's really surprising against the stereotypes. But what kind of maybe mindsets or attitude, when we go dive in deeper, do you miss in Germany from, let's say, UK? Or so what do you miss? What do you think the Germans could learn maybe from the English, or when you take your experience in France or China? What do you miss from them, talking about the invisible
mindset? And again, I think this is one thing that can't be generalized, because I've met some Germans with great mindsets, yourself, for example. Well, German, Polish. As German as it comes, right? I couldn't really say, because I've met a diverse range of people. So I would say maybe in the more rural. Okay, I think an example is the made in Germany quality that is associated. I think and I'm sorry, my German friends, I think the Germans believe it a lot more than the rest of the world does.
Okay.
So, for example,
So it's not as special as they think.
yes, or I think the notion of that has worn off over time.
Okay.
And then it's still perceived in Germany. So I meet people and they say, "Oh, do you know this person? They're very popular in Germany." I'm like, "Well, I don't know them."
Mm-hmm.
And
They think that you should.
yeah, they think you should because everybody knows them, but it's a German thing. Don't know who they are.
It's only one of more than 100 countries.
Exactly. When you from a worldwide perspective, there are small fish in a big pond. So I think that's one of the things that I've noticed.
So not to be so egocentric and think that we are the center of the world.
Your words, not mine. Yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much for this beautiful interview with a lot of personal stories and laughing.
My pleasure, my pleasure. I'm super passionate, and I think you do very important work in terms of intercultural awareness, because from my personal and professional experience helping people work abroad and secure international clients,
Mm-hmm.
it's key and very, very often overlooked to be successful on a global scale,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to adapt and to be able to understand. And once you understand that, you can adapt your behavior accordingly in terms of cultural influences. And again, you can adapt how you respond in terms of mindset. So you won't be offended again over things that are just culturally different rather than personal to you. So I think intercultural awareness is important and imperative for everyone thinking of working on a global scale, going abroad, even for holidays, even for your hobbies, doing that abroad, understanding that. I was saying actually, I was drowned in China. I went on a jet ski and I'm not the best swimmer, and I said to the lifeguard, "Oh, can you keep an eye out on me?" And again, I went with a lot of foreign people, and we thought, "Oh, we know better." So we went all out at sea, and because my friends were doing it, and I was like, "Yes, I could do it. You only live once." And I ended up falling in the ocean, not being able to swim. But we were so far out that the lifeguards didn't see me. And for me, I expected them as lifeguards. It's their duty to follow me, especially when I said, "I can't swim, look out for me." But that wasn't the case, and nobody took responsibility then. It took other people to jump off their jet skis and jump into the water to save me, but that was an assumption I'd made, that because they were lifeguards and it's their job, of course they're going to do it. But you can't assume those things in different cultural contexts. So it's really important, again, professionally, personally, leisurely, to be aware of intercultural awareness. So I think you do a fabulous job.
Thank you.
I honor you for that.
Thank you so much. It's my mission, not only to help people to grow abroad, to get on well there with people, but also I think knowing about the cultural differences, you start thinking about yourself in a different perspective.
Absolutely.
And you just develop your personality. But
Yeah.
my listeners know already what I do probably. I would like to ask you in a couple of sentences to explain what you do and what could the listeners gain from you. So how can you support them, and what's your everyday life in your business?
So my mission, I run a company called Career and Mindset Limited, and that helps individuals and businesses to succeed at their career or business. So for individuals, it's really understanding yourself, knowing yourself, what you're capable of, what your natural path to wealth is, and then leveraging those strengths and passions and making a difference to your career or the business that you start. So that's how I help individuals. With corporates, I help them to align their employees' personal goals and with their corporate goals, so they can, one, drive their career success, work together to achieve the corporate goals, but also feel part of the group, you know, and it comes with changing the mindset of what your work should be, or whether you should enjoy your work or not. You know, it's actually what difference is me cleaning this room going to make to the overall objectives. So actually, for example, as a hospital cleaner, if I don't clean this floor, people could die out of it. You know, I do important jobs. So even though I'm a cleaner, I'm not just a cleaner. My work is key. Like, it's as important as being a doctor to help save these people's lives. And you approach your work with a different mindset and a different attitude than you would do if you just think your work is not important and you're just a cleaner and it's not appreciated. So that's what I help corporates with. And then also people that want to work abroad or to scale their businesses globally, working with international clientele, speaking on big stages, how to express yourself. So be true to who you are, understand your personality, highlight the bits that make you, and put that in an intercultural, international perspective, so you can attract international clients and succeed on a global scale. So that's how I work with career and mindset and business training, to be able to incorporate all those techniques together to make you a success in the work you choose to do.
Yeah, great. So what I could hear, it's about feeling fulfilled. It doesn't matter if you are working in one country in a company and you just want to find out what's right for you.
Exactly.
If you want to change something to feel better, or maybe you want to expand to another country, culture.
Exactly.
So the common thing is to be fulfilled.
To be fulfilled, and that's one of the core pillars, to be fulfilled, which means you earn more as well, because when you work from the heart, you get promoted faster, you become a key person in whatever business or career or industry. And it's not just about making a difference within your company or your work, but making a difference within the industry, within the world, serving the world at large with your talents.
Okay, and how can we find you?
So my website is www.careerandmindset.com, or you can find me on Facebook as Linda Boakye.
I will put it in the show notes.
Sure. Linda Boakye, and you can email me at linda@lindaboakye.com. And Boakye is spelled differently to how it sounds. Just a heads up.
I will put the link so that people can find you in the show notes.
Awesome.
It was a fantastic pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, and I've had so much fun.
So where is the next journey?
My next journey, I'm in London in 2 days, and then I'm doing an Africa tour this year. So I'll be talking to some heads of states in Ghana, working with the UN. I'll be going to Zimbabwe and Kenya this year, South Africa, and back in the US as well.
Okay,
How
good luck for that.
Thank you.
Enjoy the time.
Will do. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Bye bye.
Welcome. Witamy. Witajcie.
Добро пожаловать.
Welcome. Sveiki atvykę.
欢迎
Tere tulemast.
Deutschland und andere Länder mit Anna Lasonczek. Der erste und einzige Podcast in Deutschland, Österreich und der Schweiz, der sich mit interkultureller Kommunikation beschäftigt, spannende Impulse über fremde Länder liefert, entfernte Kulturen näher bringt und erfolgreiche Menschen mit internationaler Erfahrung interviewt.